Six-pack Lapadat, and we got the man, the myth, the legend. And these days, maybe more myth than anything because people talk about you and you hear about you, but they don't see you on
Mhm.
the platform. And for everybody who's listening to King List, man, we talked about it several times, but you've competed 7 times in your entire career. However many, God, you're going on a decade-long veteran who's won world
Yeah.
titles as a junior, always been in the conversation. I think people think you've competed more than you have just because we're always talking about you. You're always out there. You've gone back and forth with kings like Taylor Atwood. You're always in the mix. But
Mhm.
you had long hiatuses, and just quickly catch up on people. I'll give a quick 2 minute, then I'll toss to you for your current situation, what the update is. But you were gone 4 years for nothing that had anything to do with you. Politics and powerlifting within the federation and has nothing to do with you. And so there's a 4 year gap between you winning junior worlds. And it's got to be noted, your total was higher than everybody in the open. That
Yeah.
rarely happens. A junior out totals the open. Happened with you. We all knew you were special. We're like, oh my God, can't wait till he comes back. 4 years. Come back in the USAPL thinking, oh my gosh, I've never come back in the IPF. I've lost 4 years of my athletic prime. And then it all gets worked out at your national level and it's recognized by the IPF. And oh my gosh, now you're finding out what you're about to tell us, which is crazy. But all right, my man. So the Federation is back, recognized by the IPF. However,
Mhm.
after waiting 4 fucking years, you competed in USAPL. God bless. I think you're more patient than 99% of people out there. And what are we
Yeah.
looking at now?
Yeah, so after I did that first meet in the USCPL, that was in 2022. As you said, like very shortly after that, just like a couple of weeks after, the whole situation was just like rectified, right? And I immediately was like, yo, I want to go back to the IPF. And I basically, like contacted the relevant like people and everything. And I got a 12-month suspension. So I got that like initial suspension in 2022, right? And at the time, coming off of already having that like 4 year gap, you can imagine how like emotional it would have been to be just did that one meet and gotten a taste of like what it's like to be back on the platform, what it's like to be competing again. And for everybody who's followed me for the past 4 years and has been like, you should compete, you should compete, you should compete, to finally like, I guess be able to showcase just a little bit of what I was capable of, to then be like, yo, we have a 12-month suspension. I just couldn't stomach that. And that's why I was like, all right, cool. I'm probably gonna stay in the USAPL for a little bit more. And I ended up doing the Arnold, and then I did my last meet, which was the USAPL Nationals, where unfortunately I was a guest lifter. But that's sort of how that went. And then because I did those two additional meets, my thought process, maybe I didn't read into the rule enough, Article 14, but my thought process was that it would just like push back the 12-month suspension. So every meet I did, I thought, okay, it would basically reset the 12 months. But what happened was that because I did two additional meets and not just one additional meet, instead of just pushing it back, it actually tacked on a little bit more and pushed it back. So I got 12 months plus an additional 5 months, pushing it to 17 months total, which started at the date of my last competition, which is mid-September of 2023. So yeah, that's where we are.
And considering the circumstances,
Mhm.
I would, all I could say is, I hope that at some point for like time served and everything, if there's anything that the Fed could take into consideration and say, look, let's abbreviate this, let's shorten this to
Mhm.
12 months if he does such and such, whether it's volunteer work or whether it's whatever, that would be phenomenal. I'm not saying maybe there's nothing they can. Maybe they're like, look, we're thinking about that, but we've already, I don't think we can or whatever. Like it is what it is. I understand they're trying to hold the rule of the law. The only
Yeah.
thing I would say is on my end, and you could, whether you want to comment or not, this is just my own opinions on it, looking at it, is the fact, the way it rolled out, it wasn't you were just in the Fed and decided, I'm going to step out and try USAPL. It because of the whole 4 years of a young man's prime and your athletic prime. You know, the NFL, they call it, I mean, it's obviously the National Football League, but they also call it not for long because the average
Yeah.
NFL career is 4 years.
Hmm.
You lost 4 years of your athletic prime. Time flies, my
Hmm.
friend. The athletic prime's the shortest. And for you to be like, I'm going to go, I'm cracking, I'm going, and you do a meet, you would just hope that it's like, look it, yes, by the book, this is what you should get. However, under these circumstances, let's 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 take a look at this. And maybe they're like, okay, just off the hop, we can't shorten it. But what if he does time served and we also get him to do a couple additional things? I mean, even prisoners get off if they do time well served. You know what I mean? Like, and do
Yeah.
extra things. You would hope there's some kind of avenue given the circumstances because you initially got wrapped up in some things that it wasn't you. This wasn't your fight, your decision, your it's look at I was you sat out 4 years, man.
Yeah.
You know, you lost so much. You when you were going back and forth with Taylor, you were like, Taylor, with all due respect, if I had those four, you could throw in my face all the world titles you have, and it's true. But if I
Hmm.
wasn't gone for those 4 years, what might my resume be?
Yeah.
It's held
And
against you. And it's like,
yeah.
that's what drives some people insane.
And so and that's the thing that like I think it gives me a very unique perspective on powerlifting because I don't think that there's anyone else um who has the talent level that I have and has also gone through the same set of circumstances that I have, you know? Because like for example, one of the things I was listening to that the podcast that you did with Russ, the most recent one, and you were mentioning that like he's basically the only guy who has kind of like bridged the eras of like the late 20 teens to right now. And I've bridged that era.
That's
And
right.
I've not been even been able to compete. You know what I mean? And it's almost sad that like and when I think about it, like it's tough, like that I basically had to be as good as I am in order to still like be relevant. You know what I mean? Like if I wasn't as good as I was, I would have been forgotten about. You know what I mean? And it just it gives me a very unique perspective on powerlifting, and it almost makes me like a little bit I don't want to say like cynical, but I don't know. I'm very like I get very like pissed off with a lot of things, and it motivates me more because it's almost like if like for example when I was battling with Taylor and I said like the things that I said, I meant everything in that. And him obviously not having the evidence of me competing or anything like that would just dismiss me as like, oh, that's just somebody else who's just thinking. But to me, it's like I'm almost sure that I'm one of, if not the best powerlifter in the world. And that's genuinely how I feel, like for real. That's how I feel. And I think that I have the talent, the discipline, and the work ethic to back that up, you know? And I just think I just need the opportunities to do so. And, you know, hopefully next year I get the opportunity to do so. But as you said, it's still tough because it's like, even if I go on to have like a 5 year run of winning the 120s and everything like that, it's still that period of time that's missing that my legacy could have been so much better, you know? And it's a tough pill to swallow, you know?
That's why I sincerely hope that the Federation, if they're listening to this, considers how much of the impact you've already taken. And it's
Yeah.
if there's any kind of like we got to prove a point, the point has been proven to death. This is the negative impact. If there's like there's got to be a hit to this young man, How big of a hit do you need? This is career legacy altering stuff already done. What more? How much more blood do you want from that stone? 12 months. If he does the time served well, give him an option of some volunteer work, some whatever it is in the background to help out and to be in good standing and double up to be like, okay. And for anyone else, nobody's going to come across in the future and say, well, if I did an untested meet, or just not a WADA compliant meet, which was USAPL, it was tested, but not WADA compliant. If I do a WADA compliant meet and something similar, they'll point to Rondell like, well, you did this for Rondell. They would be able to retort and say, excuse me, Rondell did 4 years before that. That was extreme circumstances, very unique circumstances. Those are not your
Yeah.
circumstances. And it is a case by case in all law.
Hmm.
You go in there and it's case by case and you put it forth and you get all different types of sentencing with all these other variables put into play. This is totally normal to take these things into and say, look, we're going to give you an avenue or a pathway to shorten this due to these extraneous circumstances that happened. And this
Yeah.
isn't normal. This wasn't normal. You made decisions under duress that, God bless, man. Anybody listening who's like, yo, I'm gone for 4 years in my prime with everything you just said. You're not just homeboy at the freaking local level. You're possibly the greatest powerlifter walking the earth. And you're the guy who's off, not the guy who's local, who's missing his prime. You're that guy. And you decided, all right, 4 years is enough. I'm going to go USAPL for a couple of meets.
Yeah.
And there are people coming from the USAPL serving no time at
Yeah.
all because they weren't in the water initially. That's what kills me even more. With all of these
Yeah.
circumstances, you got to say, please, please, for anyone listening, just consider another pathway, not just wipe it clean, go back to what you said, just sit down and be like, how do we get this young man to be 12 months?
Yeah.
Or something like that. That would be lovely. And just to point out to people, like for instance, I don't know if you do you follow any of the untested competitions that are going on?
Yeah, I do. I coach quite a few guys who compete untested, so I do follow them.
Yeah. Like Johnny and I seen yeah. Well, so
Yeah.
the Labs Pro happened in Europe and let me just pull this up here. I don't know if you've seen there's Sir Dave Richardson in the
Hmm.
125, Nicolas Dupreez in South
Yeah.
Africa, Fernando Arias and Dan Bell. So just to give some perspective to everybody, the winning total in the 125s, let me just remind everybody, untested, okay, as much PEDs as they want. You've seen these fellas, God bless, they're rather open about it. And I mean, you look at Nico Dupreez, God bless, the man is like a Greek god descended from the heavens. All right. 125 kilo class, first off. So they got 5 kilos on you. 5 kilos on you, 24-hour weigh-ins, not 2-hour weigh-ins.
Hmm.
Knee wraps, deadlift bar, and you're allowed at whatever PEDs you want.
Yeah.
And this isn't bringing them down. I think they're phenomenal. I repost them all the time, all of them.
Yeah.
But the winning total was 1085, 1085 kilos. Your
Hmm.
total last fall, 2-hour weigh-in, 120 kilos. That's spotting 5 kilos in terms of the weight class. No knee
Hmm.
wraps, no deadlift bar, and drug tested, 1045, 1045 kilos.
Yeah.
Nico Dupreez, who the Greek god, 1065 kilos was his total. Again, 125 kilo weight class, 24-hour weigh in, wraps, deadlift bar. What are we talking about here? Dan
Yeah.
Bell, who's like one of the all-time, Dan Bell, who had the all-time total record at this meet. Now, this is a comebacking Dan Bell, and Dan Bell's a legend. Again, this isn't putting these guys down. 1,052.5 kilos. This isn't putting other guys down. They're phenomenal. Repost them all the
Hmm.
time. Give them tons of flowers. This is just emphasizing how special you are. And it was last September you did 1045. What are you doing now if you were to peak and hit it on the same weekend, those gentlemen, I'm assuming more than 1045. What might you have
The
done?
the thing is, even in September, like I hate when powerlifters have like good meets and then they say it was a bad meet because it almost seems like if they're trying to make it seem more impressive, like, oh no, I could have did more, like But the reality of it is that coming into the meet, I was projecting somewhere closer to like 1065 personally. Um, just because like the squat peak, we didn't necessarily like it wasn't necessarily perfect. And one of the biggest reasons for that is just simply you can imagine 4 years of just training, not competing, and then just doing 3 meets in the time span of like a year and a half. It's almost like if like I was relearning my body. Because the last time that I peaked and competed and everything like that, I was 21 years old and I was on 105. Now, when I did that first meet, I was 26 years old and I was at 120. You know what I mean? So it's like a lot of things changed. The weight that I was handling was changed, everything like that. So over the course of those 3 meets, I was actually now like feeling like I was like getting my foot in and like really like relearning myself. So yeah, and as you said, like since then I've made progress with like a lot of the different things that like I posted and documented and stuff like that. And again I say this with genuine conviction because in the past I've said, oh well, I think I could do 1050, and I know you and Taylor and stuff like that were like, oh, that's just like what if and everything like that. And it is what if until it happens, but I feel like I speak from a very like realistic, like based standpoint. Like I don't project like, oh, well, I'm gonna out total Jesus. I don't think that will ever happen. But I do think that right now, I think I'm capable of like 10, 1070, 1075 personally.
When I said earlier, you've only competed 7 times, 3 of those were the USAPL. That's another thing I hope the Federation takes into account. Like, what were you to move forward with only 4 meets on your record when you're who you are and everything you're
Yeah,
capable of? You literally almost doubled the amount of competitions you had with that brief USAPL stint.
yeah,
For you, I mean, what are we talking about? You almost doubled it in that very brief stint. You had to do what you had to. It's not usual circumstances, so it should be taken as such. I would feel,
yeah.
but it is what it is. So I got some questions about this. I want
Hmm.
to double back to the whole uh, comparing tested versus non-tested and all that in a second.
Yeah.
But first, let me ask you, with your current situation, what can you do? And when I ask this, obviously you can have an SBD day.
Hmm.
Could you do an SBD day on the platform with no officials? No officials. So if you were to weigh in
Hmm.
2 hours before you lift, but there's no officials weighing you in, you can weigh in every day. No one can
Yeah.
stop you from measuring what your body weight is that morning. Of course, it's ridiculous. Could
Hmm.
you not weigh in? There's no officials there, so it's not official weigh in. Could you not step onto a platform? Of course, you can lift at a platform. People have platforms everywhere. Of course, you can lift
Yeah.
SPD on a platform. There's no officials. There's no judges.
Hmm.
So it's not official lifts. It's not official weigh in. It's not
Yeah.
official. It's not official lifts. Well, of course, man. People do SBD dates every single day.
Yeah.
So what is the difference? Because Taylor and Delaney did exhibition lifts, bench press, at one of those
Hmm.
expo events. Never got in trouble because there was no actual officials. I think they even did spotted each other. Hit some
Yeah.
big lifts. Everyone went nutso and everyone loved it. But aesthetically, when watching it, if this was on a stream, people stream SBD days all the time, my friend. People
Yeah.
stream lifts all the time. The only difference is you do it with a platform behind you.
Hmm.
Could you not do that?
I could. And it's not something that I would be opposed to because I actually said on my YouTube that one of the things that I was planning to do in the meantime was just to have like a mock meet type of thing. So basically what you're describing, where I weigh in, make it legit, squat, bench, deadlift, probably go live, stuff like that. And I still might, but the only thing is that I I'm not young anymore. Well, at least I don't consider myself young anymore. Like
How old are you, Playboy?
I just turned 28 in January,
You're
right?
young. You're young.
I somewhat, but I don't know. I feel like if as I get closer and closer to like my like genetic potential, I feel like if it's very risky to like for example that like the 10:45 that I did, right? If I was to do something like that in training, I feel like it's almost like taken away from the number of times that I can do it in competition. You know what I mean? In like legit sanction competition. So I wouldn't
But
mind.
here's what it is. Here's what it is. Let me jump in for a second. Let me jump in for
Yeah.
a second. Everything I said,
Hmm.
however, let's say you were to do this and there was a competition being held,
Hmm.
or whatever. It looks like the background platform. This isn't just a gym; it's a mock meet.
Yeah.
There's no officials. There's no officials,
Hmm.
but you're on that platform that lifters would be on competing. It looks
Yeah.
like that.
Hmm.
You might even have somebody commentating it.
Yeah.
It'll look on a stream. It'll feel
Hmm.
like exactly you have 3 attempts. It'll feel all like that.
Yeah.
And you hit like that. And to your point, am I taking away the times I can actually do it? My friend, you've competed 7 times in your career. If you do a mock meet and it's going to shorten your career at all, that's the wildest. My answer would be no. There are people who
Yeah.
play football and do 16 games a season and play 15 years. My man, you are tougher than that. Your body won't recognize your if it's a mock meet, real meat, whatever. I think
Yeah.
if you had the opportunity to do a real meet, you would. And I think if you present this like you present this, it's literally just a show of strength and potential of where you're at to remind
Yeah.
people. And you could literally have it hyped, countdown, the whole night. The only difference is there's no officials there. So these aren't going to show up in your open powerlifting. It's not official and it's not going to
Hmm.
get you in any kind of trouble because it's quote unquote mock meet. But to the
Yeah.
whole world, watching the live stream, watching the highlights, it's to see where can Rondell push this. And you treat
Yeah.
it as such. You could treat it as such. Interviews
Hmm.
before, interviews afterwards. Think about it like that, not just a big SPD day. Think of how creative you can get if you were to
Hmm.
show up and just put on some exhibition lifting at some exhibition. What if it's at a fitness deep? What if it's at a fitness expo with a lot of people there?
Yeah. I, I see the potential for it. So two things on that. One is that my initial plan was to, if I was to do a mock meet, I probably wasn't looking to go all out. So even if I could, let's say total like, I don't know, 10:75 or something like that, my plan wasn't to do that like just yet. It was just to continue building, building, building. And the goal would have been that for next year Worlds, which I would hopefully attend, to total 1100. That would have been my goal. The second thing is that one of the reasons why I might be a little bit like uh like pensive in um doing it at like a expo or like a meet or something like that, like after the meet or something, is that I feel like if the rules when it comes to whether it be the TTPF or the IPF or whatever, are very strictly applied to me. You know what I mean? So it could be a situation where it could not be like against the rules, so to speak, but I just feel like if every opportunity so far has been taken against me, like every you know what I mean, like every like I've never been given
Why
any
would you
sort of
feel
like
that?
leeway.
Oh wow, where would you get that impression, Rondell? You've only competed 7 times in a 10-year career.
Yeah.
No,
So
you're
I've
right.
never. Yeah. So I would be almost like scared, to be honest. So I don't know.
But put it this way, how what I would say though, what I would advise and counsel would be you would work alongside with the federation you're with. So would be
Hmm.
in step with them. And you would say, I'm planning on doing an SBD. It's going to be a max out SBD day, like everyone does. I'm going to weigh my body weight before. Yeah, I weighed myself this morning, sir. I don't need permission by anybody to weigh myself and do an SBD day.
Hmm.
So you could do it, obviously, and just be like, I want to be in compliance. So here's an idea, but I don't want to be out of compliance. So what would you want to not see to make sure I'm not out of compliance? If they said, don't, first off, you can't have any officials involved in the weigh-in or the lifts. So the weigh-in's not official and the lifts aren't official. Done. Easy.
Hmm.
So none of this is official. Done. If they're like, we don't want you at an actual competition because it murkies the waters. Done. No worries. So then you could do it almost anywhere now. A gym
Yeah.
has seminars that fly people in, host people. There could be nobody else lifting, and this is just literally you come in, belt off a seminar, and hit a heavy SBD day after. Everyone hangs out afterwards to watch history be made, and it's
Yeah.
all exhibition. It's all for fun. Doesn't mean nothing. People do lifting all the time like that. There's no way that you can't find a common ground with them. Be like, there's something we could do. Yes, there is. Because I'm going to do SBD days, and I'm going to be weighing my body weight. So, to what
Yeah.
extent? And it's not, well, they have to talk to you about it. So we just find that middle ground. And given everything that we've already said, there has to be some middle ground.
Yeah.
And my man, if we put anything together, go all out and remind people and have your Taylor Atwood moment where you look at it and say, what is the untested record? What is the
Hmm.
tested record? What is the untested record? What is it all? I'm going all in. You know,
Yeah.
I'm going to I'm going for it. And yes, it will mean something, sir. Yes, it will.
Hmm.
And if you present it properly, it'll definitely mean something. Look at there's always ways to work things out. Look at freaking Logan Paul and Mike Tyson, and they're doing exhibition boxing matches and the whole nine. You think
Yeah.
people give a shit? It's going to be do blockbuster numbers. Mike Tyson and Roy Jones was an exhibition boxing match, and it literally had the highest pay per view of all boxing pay per views that year. Did you know that? Because Mike Tyson was
Yeah.
coming back, and it's Mike Tyson. It doesn't matter, official, unofficial, whatever the hell. You can package something and do something and still stay within. And
Yeah.
there's something to be done. We'll talk about it. We don't have to sort it all out right now, but there can be
Yeah.
something done. There can be something done with a stream. People stream SBD days and workout days all the time. I believe, dog.
Sure.
I believe. And if you cut loose, people will
Hmm.
talk. It won't be like nothing. People will, you cut loose and be like, here's my goal. And you clearly state, I want to take the tested and untested. I want to outlift all those. And that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
Dog, you don't think people are going to talk if you do it? Of course. Of course it'll mean something.
I, I think so. Like the engagement that I get from like SBD sessions or like training totals and stuff like that is crazy. Like even the reel that I posted, I saw you had reshared it. The one where I was talking about that I'm the only person that could stop the US team from sweeping.
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
I
like
loved
both
it.
of those, yeah, both of those reels got like 600K views and like 30K likes. So it's like crazy the engagement that I guess SBD days get even when it's like in the gym or something like that. So yeah, I guess I will reconsider it, I guess, you know.
But it's just an SBD day. We're going to fancy it up. What
Yeah.
can we do in the background? Even if it's an SBD day and it's at a gym, but you make it appear like you make a platform. So the background, everything, you get it all done up
Mm.
nice. So
Yeah.
it looks proper. And let's talk, dog. I don't know if you know, but I commentate from time to time. Let's make this as for really real as possible. During this SPD session, I would love to commentate it. I would love to do an interview before, interview afterwards. It's 3 attempts in your SPD session. Just like get yourself a handler and
Yeah.
treat it proper. And it doesn't have to be with a meet. Doesn't have to be anything like that. It's just an SPD day. But we're gonna because guess there's things we could do. There's things we could
Yeah.
do. And yeah, dude, that meme video you did was hilarious. I shared it, and I didn't even double back to check out your numbers, but I seen the numbers that even just me sharing it in the story and people sharing the story
Yeah.
where they were like the click throughs. So yeah, I've seen some click throughs, but yeah, it was hilarious. First off, let's talk about that for a hot minute.
Hmm.
Do you think the US will sweep the men's, not the women's?
Um, I think most classes they have on lock. I think the difficult classes would be the 59s and the well, that is if Sergey comes back. Like if he
He's
doesn't come
not.
back,
So
he's
I'll
not.
update you. Yeah, apparently he's not going to make it this year. At the world level, anyways. If they end up at a non-world level, they can. So if they both ended up at, I don't know, wherever. So, anyways, doesn't not the point. So yeah. So the 59s then, although Ivan Campano from Spain just did a 630 total in
Mhm.
the gym. I don't know his body weight. But anyways, sorry. I'm divergent, but yeah, 59s is kind of close. If he could do that one meet day.
Yeah, so 59. Yeah, so 59s would be one. And then if not 59s, if Sergey isn't there, then the only weight class I could see being like closely contested is like the 93s. I could see the 93s being like a problem because obviously Gustav and Pitre, they basically have the same total. And then Emil is looking crazy strong right now.
Killing.
So um yeah.
So in the
So I
66s,
think if any, yeah, I was gonna
sorry,
say
go
if
ahead.
any weight class like falls through, it probably will be the 93s because I don't foresee anyone else really having like any issues winning.
So the 66s, Jonathan Garcia from America, he does have the unofficial world record. Like he's ahead.
Mhm.
He's the number one nomination. It's still close because Kasim Sand from Thailand, Kyoto from Japan, and obviously Penna from France. Like they're capable. But Jonathan is, to your point, he's got a spread because he's got the unofficial world record. But I think
Yeah.
66 is close, and 93s, they're like dead even. Gustav
Yep.
and Brendan are exactly 895. That's crazy.
Hmm.
And then Emil just did in the gym over 900 kilos. I think he did 906. And Emil is full well capable. And I mean, yeah, you got some, man, 93s are stacked. So if you were to give a percentage,
Hmm.
or you know what, just straight up, do you think they sweep?
Um, no, I don't think this week.
Oh, wow. See, it would be the first time ever that a nation swept. No
Yeah,
nation, men or women's, no nation has ever swept.
yeah. I don't think this week. The only reason I would say that though, and this is no shade to Pitre. I love Pitre, but I'm just not seeing like I would have expected that after nationals because I know you coming into PA Nats, he was talking about just the like things he was facing and everything like that. I would have expected to see him hit the ground running a little bit more than he did. And it just seems like if he's having a few bad sessions here and there. He's not really like into it as much as he should be. Maybe that's just what he's posting on social media. Maybe he's a sort of like Ryan Garcia kind of thing he's putting on. If so, it's wicked. Um, but I don't know. I don't think they sweep, but it's possible. So
Yeah, the thing with Petrie, it feels like he's got a wealth of potential. And people talk about him like, I mean, it's his stablemate, if you will, but Bob talks about him like, he's going to take this into the mid 900s before.
mhm.
But right now, we haven't broken 900 yet. Petrie hasn't broken 900 yet. He's got all the potential. He said he was going for Jesse Norris's total. And I mean, the historic total that Jesse Norris had. And, we haven't seen it yet. So then people are asking themselves, because it's been a hot minute, is it talk or is it actually potential? Because people come in with a lot of hype and a lot of belief. There's no question Petrie's world class. He's tied for the biggest total in 93. So nobody could dispute that. even haters would
Yeah.
be like, wow, I mean, how is he like he's good. He's better than good. He's great. He's amongst the elite. But
Hmm.
is he better than Gustav?
Yeah.
Is he better than Emil? Is he better than I mean, we got to see him against Keiko and Gavin even. That'd be nice. Because Gavin also, albeit a little on the chunky side, but he also hit 895 the same day. I
Yeah.
would love to see Gavin get back down to 93 kilos. Can he maintain 895? Can he build upon? Because his bench press has gone up and his body weight's gone down. So Gavin's also still in the mix. Keiko, what if Keiko comes back? He did 890, he did 893. He's 2 kilos off. I mean,
Yeah.
we're kidding ourselves that he couldn't come back. So yeah, I agree with you. It's not even shade. It's more he's right in the lion's den. And
Yeah.
it's gonna come time. Is this actual potential to pull it off? Or is it hype? And these
Yeah.
questions aren't bad questions to have because it makes people intrigued and lean in and watch. But
Yeah.
we're gonna find out.
The thing I actually fully agree with Bob though, in terms of like what the like standard for like a elite 93 should be. I feel as if like someone should have totaled over 900 in competition by now. Obviously Jesse Norris did, but that's so long ago and the circumstances were like sketchy. But I feel like if someone in the 93 needs to pull away, and something maybe along the lines of like 920 to 925, I think is more along the lines of what like a true outlier in that class would be. Because you have guys like Russ, and at this point you have Austin Perkins like creeping up on the 93s, which is to me that's like disrespect. Like like I would never like you
Disrespectful.
know what I mean? Yeah, so uh yeah, I guess we'll see. They're all super talented guys, but I do feel like someone needs to just like kind of come in and stamp and say like this is my weight class, you know?
You raise an interesting question or an interesting point, rather, because I've had these discussions in DMs and people have talked to me about how there's a couple weight classes that need to level up. Speaking about the
Hmm.
59s earlier, they're now beginning to level. Fedoshenko reigned
Yeah,
over a relatively weak 59 kilo class, outliers. How many men are 130 pounds and they're in a strength sport, weightlifting, walking around, etc.? Now we're starting to see a cluster of talent in the 59s. 66s do not have that outlier yet. Not yet. I mean, these guys are starting
yeah,
to. There's potential in Daniel Clements. People started getting excited. Maybe Daniel Clements could help raise that when he hit that 745. But the 60s, the gap between the weight classes of 66 to 74, the gap between that, you look at Austin Perkins and you look at the 66s, okay, there should be a gap. Sure, there's a weight class, but the gap is
yeah.
crazy. The gap is
Insane.
insane. The
Yeah,
gap isn't even close. And to your point, we probably haven't seen that outlier. We've seen very quality lifters. Lifters who like
yeah,
what Penna has done to popularize the 66s cannot be understated. I mean,
yeah,
he is very, very necessary. And if he wins this worlds, which he could, he's be the only 66 to win it 3 times, and he'd be the best resume we ever seen at 66. But even
yeah.
Penna has said us 66, he's been on the podcast saying we haven't extended that record to be close enough to the 74s. I think your point is great using almost a Sheffield style of looking at things in terms
Hmm.
of the total. Where does it compare to other people's totals in other weight classes? That's
Yeah,
really how you know. Have your class, have you guys as a group maximized your potential? Well, if the gap is as big as between the 66s and 74s, between Penna and Austin, it looks like
hmm,
there'd be another weight class in between there. Not just Penna, but all the 66. Jonathan Garcia, unofficial world record holder at 66. The difference between him and Austin, if you just look at their totals, 717.5 and
yeah,
851. I get it. He was 74 point a little extra. So let's use 839. It looks like there's another weight class in between there.
yeah.
It looks like there would be if you're just looking at the totals. That tells me
Yeah,
the 74s we've seen they're where there should be. The 66s, we haven't seen our Austin or Taylor outlier yet. I've even had people tell me they don't believe the 83s have seen that individual yet, despite Russ. They think Russ
Yeah.
is like, oh, I mean, in my mind's eye, the greatest 83 in the most stacked resume period. And what he's done is incredible. All right. And
Yeah.
everyone knows when I go on about Russ, like, oh, here he comes with Russ. However,
Mhm.
is he the out? Russ himself has said, I'm not the outlier that Austin Perkins is.
No, he's not.
And we haven't seen that yet in the 83s and what that looks
I,
like.
I think on the men's side of powerlifting, we've only actually seen four outliers. Um, at least in my opinion and like my estimation. And those guys are Jesus, myself, Bob, and Perk. That's it. And the reason why I qualify Bob in that is because I consider him a 105. Like
Yeah.
because that's basically what
Okay.
he is, right?
Now I'm with you. Now I'm with you.
Yeah. Um, because if you think about it, right, for the 120s, I have on open powerlifting, I have the top three totals for the 120s. I did 992, 1,002.5, and then 1045. So before me, like if I didn't exist, the situation right now would be that a guy who weighs 106 point something kg is about to out total every 120 ever. That's crazy.
That's a
That
good
is
way of putting it.
crazy. So it's like, if it wasn't for me, then it would be clear to see that, yo, the 120s haven't, you know what I mean? Like, we haven't seen that person yet. And I think the person who is like kind of like carded to come and fill that role, again, if it wasn't for me, would have been like Nonso from the UK. I see potential in him to be that like 1,000 kg plus lifter. Um, but yeah, that's to me, that's the only four like true outliers and like next evolution of powerlifting lifters that we've seen on the men's side. So
Okay, two things I got to throw out there then for follow up. And I don't think you're necessarily off base, except for one caveat I got to throw in there.
yeah,
I think Taylor's got to be thrown in that mix myself, only
yeah,
because, okay. So I would
yeah.
say, if so, okay. So you make currently there's four, but all time in our era, in the classic era, you'd include Taylor as an outlier that makes the cut. And okay, fair enough. And then my second point,
Mhm.
oh, Bob, would you say Bob should go 105 or stay 120? Because I don't know if you've seen that interview I had with him um, right after the American Nationals, but he said there's a 70% chance he goes 105 in the future for Sheffield. He'll go 120 for Worlds. It makes
Mhm.
sense because America want if they want the sweep, collect all those points, et cetera, team points, et cetera, they would go him 120 and Ashton 105.
Yeah.
And then he was thinking, because he lost Ashton head up. The last time they clashed, head up, Ashton won. And
Mhm.
he has an opportunity here. If he goes 105 to be the greatest 105 of all time, head up with a legend like Ashton, who would be a world champion conceivably by then. We'll see what happens with Anatoly. I'm not writing him off.
Mhm.
And could you imagine Sheffield? My God, what if Sheffield brought in Anatoly and Ashton and Bob head to head? I mean, could you imagine that the hype on that showdown?
Yeah.
Would you? And I know this is kind of, being who you are, you're like, damn it, but I will lose an adversary that everybody's high on. And you know
Yeah.
what that means for your career when you have someone that everyone's high on and the hype that he could bring. How do you feel about that?
Yeah. Um, so I definitely understand what like Marcellus and like his team are trying to do. Basically, they're trying to spread the talent, right? So if Bob and Ashton were to like battle against each other, it's almost like if you have two guys from the same team that like like one of y'all could go 120 and still win, even though you're not gonna be the most competitive version of yourself. You could still win there, so you might as well. And Bob is that guy just because me standing next to Bob, we have the same like dimensions with the exact same height, similar arm length, similar hand sizes. We built very similarly, except Bob is me if I was to lose like 25 pounds. Like that would be I would be Bob. Um So the thing is, from like a competitive standpoint, like a Sheffield standpoint, like a legacy standpoint, I think he would be most impactful in the 105. So just, off season weighing like 106, 107, and just making that small cut. And I think for Sheffield, that would be an excellent idea. The thing is, though, it would be considering that I will most likely be coming back to like Worlds and stuff like that next year. It's almost like it's a bad idea for him to be kind of like in between both of those. So it's almost like if this Worlds, yes, he could do 120, and probably I think he could win. He could probably beat Tony, and I think Tony would be his biggest competition there. Should be fine, right? But if it is after that, your plan is to cut down to 105 for Sheffield, then you need to stay 105 because there's no way you're going to make 105 for Sheffield and then, try to bounce back to 120 by Wolves and then beat me. Like that's a tough proposition.
I agree, and the only way he's going to cover the gap against you, he needs everything in his favor, and he's going to need to be. The thing is, he said he was trying to gain the body weight. He was shocked that he only weighed in at 106. And 106, if we're honest, that's a small 105. You only cut 1 kilo. Jessica Bittner cuts way more than that at a much smaller body weight. 1 kilo? I mean, he's not even a big 105. He's a small 105. I agree with you. If he fully commits, can he catch up to you? I mean, he doesn't go 105. He just goes full on from now until your return, bulk mode. Who did he catch? How close could he catch up to you, knowing what you're capable of?
I don't think it would be like a going into it. Oh, we're not sure what's gonna happen, but I do think it would be a situation where like a Bob and Big Dev situation where this could possibly go your way if this person doesn't have a good day. As you said, he would be in a position, I think, to keep me honest. I could see him in like the 1,030, 1,040, maybe even 1,050 range. But by then I would put myself at like 1,100, to be honest. So I think if he really commits to the bulk and he gets up to like, at least like 255, 260 by then, he could be someone that like makes me be more careful with my weight selection. But I think it would take him maybe another year on top of that to get to a point where it's like, oh well, these guys like, so.
Or is there another 120 that you're keeping your eye on and you're like, not now, but in the future? Are you just that far? Here's the thing. I think you are like Austin Perkins and you're just too far ahead of the other 120s, if I'm 100% honest. I think you're hit the nail right on the head when you said Perk is to the 74s, what Bob is to the 105s, what I am to the 120s, what Jesus is to the 120 pluses. And I think just like Jesus, I think your biggest adversary would be to do something absolutely incredible, like targeting untested records, targeting, like just being that straight up freak that people can't wrap their heads around.
Yeah.
I think that's where and that's why if you did an exhibition SBD day, it wouldn't take any steam out of it because people would be like, yeah, he's lifting solo. Yeah, well, who would you like to bring? Because no
Yeah.
120s, that's what the way I would sell
Yeah.
it. If we could
The,
do this thing and I'm commentating and I'm doing any kind of involved with this, trying to help you out, which I will, I will. That's exactly what I would put. You're watching history in the making. Bring whoever you like.
yeah.
It would it
The only person that I only have my eyes on like two guys right now. That's Bob. And again, that's heavily dependent on like his body weight. Um, and if I do see him cut to 105 for Sheffield, then I'll probably switch that like mental note off because I, it just wouldn't make any like it wouldn't be feasible at that point. And then Nonso from the UK. He's very young. His best total is 900, but I could just tell that like if he actually continues to take this seriously, continue to build because he's light as well. I think he was like 117, 116 or something like that. So he has some weight to gain, everything. I think he could genuinely be like a threat. I mean, that it would take some time, like it would be, like maybe 3, 4, 5 years, but I don't ever like sleep on anyone. So that's the only guys I see. And then to the point of you know, me doing to the 120s what like Austin and Taylor did to the 74s and Jesus did to like the 120 pluses. I think what I did is even worse or like even better, I guess. And the reason why is because like with Austin, there's still like reference points around him. So you have Taylor and Austin, you know, and you have Shell right now, who's like still somewhat close. You have Jesus and you have obviously Ray Williams and stuff like that, who he's not close, but the distance between the second best ever total at 120 and my best total is greater than the distance between Ray Williams and Jesus, you know? So it's like while they did definitely demolish their weight classes, and this is something that like I saw in like the comments on one of my YouTube videos, and somebody was saying like they were just angry that I don't recognize how like amazing my performance was. And when I read it, I was like, you know what, that's like actually right. It's like there is no one else right now. Like there's no one else to like even if someone else was totaling like 1,000, 1,005 or something like that, I would still be 40, 45 kilos ahead. So and the fact that there is no one and the second best total is Bob and Dennis Cornelius. They tied at 978.5. That's a substantial gap. So yeah, that's just a point that I had seen on that kind of made me realize. So
As you're talking, I got a couple points here. As you're talking, if we were to do this stream with commentary and just an SBD day, I would
mhm,
love for my co-commentator to be someone like a Matt Gary, who is an official judge, and everyone respects the hell out of him. And while we have no officials judging your list because we can't to stay
mhm,
in accordance with the suspension, the co-commentator would be able to say that we would have a squat depth angle, and he would say that's depth. Just
yeah,
and it'd be an official that everyone respects, and nobody could ever question Matt Gary on something like that. He's very strict. And
yeah,
so we go hit the squat angle on the replay, and my co would be someone like, if not Matt, someone like that who's an official and would
mhm,
say, yeah, that's depth, or yeah, that's a proper pause for the bench, or
yeah,
yes, that would be locked out or whatever. And we would have those that it's in the commentary. So it's not official, no officials.
mhm,
Well, you actually have an official, but
yeah,
he's doing commentary rules. So it doesn't matter. People have officials all over the fucking place. What are we talking about? You have officials who
mhm,
could be training with you in the gym. Of course, officials will be around, but they're
yeah,
not judging your list
mhm,
officially. It'll be on the commentary and people.
yeah.
So there's a lot of things we could do, Playboy. Um, but yeah, and to let me ask you this as well. So who do you
Mhm.
think right now? I have two questions on this because this has been discussions on previous KOTL podcasts. Who do you think has had the most impressive performance then? Are we basically saying, or are you saying that it was your 1045? Because it kind of sounds like that. What do you think?
So initially, my perspective on it was that my 1045 performance was right in line with Austin and Jesus's performances, just like isolated performances, right? And I still think that now, um, but I do think that one of the reasons why my performance wasn't like I guess given the title of like best performance ever or like it was just an honorable mention, right? In the top 5 podcasts that you guys did. and I made the whole post about it and everything. It was just an honorable mention,
It
right?
was good, by the way.
And I think,
You're good with your videos. I'll tell you that. You're good.
yeah. And the reason why it's good is because like it comes from a very genuine place. You know what I mean? So it's like it's not that I was like angry or anything like that, but I just felt like slighted. And again, nothing personal because our opinion is our opinion, right? But
Right.
that meme came from like a genuine place.
And you're not wrong,
But
by the way. You
yeah,
you're not wrong. I said it on. I know you listen to the podcast, so I've said it on several podcasts since. You could. That might be the most impressive we've seen.
yeah. And I think the reason why it was kind of overlooked is for two main reasons. One is the platform that it was on, meaning USAPL nationals and probably the last great USAPL nationals that there ever will be. And then the second one was the fact that I was a guest lifter. So in the commentary on the live stream and stuff like that, I had a bunch of people from Trinidad like ask about it and stuff. It's like I clearly lifted more than everybody else on the day, and the commentary was weird in that like, oh well, hey, we have Big Dev breaking our American record on the bench press, and then I come out and bench 10 kilos more, and it's not an American record, you know. So it was just it was almost the equivalent of an exhibition day that you are describing, where although it was an exceptional performance, it almost wasn't seen as official, even though it was official, because I wasn't actually in the competition. And then the competition itself wasn't like a Worlds or like a Sheffield or something like that. Because if I did that exact same thing at Sheffield earlier this year, and I had never done it before, I think it would have been more received as like this is one of the greatest performances of all time, you know?
Probably right.
So yeah, I think it's those things combined just kind of shrouded it. So
And that's why almost payoff wise, whether you did it as a guest lifter at USAPL Nats or whether you did it in the ideas like I'm throwing out, probably could have been the same. Only you
yeah.
just wouldn't have been suspended. Right? It's almost I'm like shit.
Yeah.
But um when I look at it, you could say that was the greatest performance, not due to the competition you faced,
Mhm.
but it's almost when you're an outlier like yourself, you're not going to have competition though.
Yeah.
However, the platform itself, it's weird, but should that be? I'm throwing this around in my head. Like, if you go to Worlds and you're under heavy fire and you have to prove yourself under heavy fire and adversity, that means something. But when you're a guy like you and there is no competition for you, then it becomes like, does it matter as much?
Yeah.
Because it really doesn't. Who are you going to put forth? So
Yeah.
then it starts being like, well, then if you take that into account, whether I was a guest lifter at USCPL Nats or whether it was done at Worlds or whether it's done at Sheffield, should that have gotten more due than it did? And whereabouts should it be?
Yeah.
And
And
yeah,
and that's the thing is like because I was talking to Matt Gary because I made some pretty aggressive jumps on some of my lifts. So for example, from my opener to second bench press, I made like a 17.5 kg jump, right? And then on my deadlift from my opener to second, I made like a what was it, like a 40 kg jump or something like that, right? It was just I was making a lot of big jumps because I was just like, this is my map to hit these numbers. And even if I get all second attempts and no third attempts, I'll still win, even though I wasn't even in the competition because I was guest lifted, but I would still have the heaviest total of the day, right? And Matt was like, you should have taken different jumps because it would have resulted in maybe like a slightly better total and different things like that. And he was like, if you were in like a tight competition, it would have, those jumps would have been unwise. Because if you missed, you miss out a chunk of your total. And the thing is, like, for me in my powerlifting career so far, I've never been in like a close battle. So, for example, in 2018, at Worlds, right, I the person who came second was Michael Davis, right? So I competed against him, and his total was about like 40 kilos below mine by the end of the day. And the jumps I took were simply based on what I wanted to hit. It wasn't based like it wasn't any like backstage crunching numbers and stuff like that. Like I've done that as like a coach, but as an athlete, I've always just this is what I want to do, and so I've never been in a situation like that, you know. So obviously it would be different if I was, but I don't foresee me being in a competition like that. Besides maybe something like Sheffield, you know, where it's like that's different. So
That's what makes Sheffield so special, is
yeah.
all the outliers that are relatively unopposed in terms of threat levels at Worlds because they're the outliers, like you said. We have a few
Mhm.
outliers that are just ahead of the pack. Now, all of those outliers are going to face each other in Sheffield. And for the first time at a Sheffield, that's what makes Sheffield so special. Now
Yeah.
now these outliers compete against each other.
Yeah.
And if you noticed, when I asked you, how do you judge whether or not someone's special? And you said, I only see 4 outliers. You judge them by how much they push the standard away from everyone else in their field and just how far
Yeah.
ahead they are. That is exactly the formula for Sheffield, is how
Yeah.
far you push the world record and you're ahead of everybody else. That's what makes Sheffield so. Are you an outlier or not? Or are you just like everybody else? Which is great because to
Yeah.
get there, you got to be a world champion.
Yeah.
But who is the outlier of all outliers? Is what
Yeah.
Sheffield is, which makes it a little special because guys like you, guys like Perk, guys like Jesus, they're going to walk into the world championships and they're heavy favorites. But when they
Mhm.
come around to Sheffield, oh, it's going to be a little bit different. Um, the one thing is, obviously, Jesus, it's kind of special because he's got the biggest total of all time, period, tested, untested, period, in all of
Yeah.
powerlifting. So he'll always have that in his back pocket. But is it the
Yeah.
single greatest outlier performance? It's difficult. It depends
Yeah.
on that's the one. I can't remember if I said Jesus or not. I think I might have. But you're right in that you should be in the honorable mentions.
Yeah.
Um, Here's another one I was going to ask you then, because I made a post and it was Perk,
Mhm.
and Perk's talking about going to the world championships. And I
Yeah.
put in there a poll saying, who is pound for pound the best powerlifter in the world today? And I
Mhm.
had Perk, I believe I had you, Jesus, and then I put other. And that could be whatever. If someone wants to put Bob, etc. The reason why I didn't put Bob is, well, first off, you can only do 3, and then if you're gonna have an other. And then Bob was going 120, so whatever. I thought he would be the guy who gets bumped out. But I agree with you about the 4 outliers. I have Bob in
Mhm.
there. But if I had to bump someone because he's going 120, I'm gonna take you in there and leave it as other. Anyways, um, people were saying though, I had John Hack in there actually, and people were saying though, you
Mhm.
can't compare tested to untested when you're talking about pound for pound because he's on PEDs, etc.
Yeah.
And yeah, for sure. But can we not? I don't know. This is a for real question. When
Yeah.
this is actually back when you and Taylor were going back and forth, and Taylor was the
Mhm.
king. And Taylor was saying, listen to me, pound for pound, I think I'm better than John Hack. Of
Yeah.
course. If you look at what John Hack does at his body weight to what a lifter who's tested does at their body weight, it's going to be different. But
Yeah.
if you look at other variables, like does John dominate in a field that's as competitive as compared to you guys dominating in a much more competitive field, just like that, just pure domination. Of
Yeah.
course, pound for pound, like, but if you take in those variables, is John pound for pound the most talented power lifter, or is
Mhm.
Austin Perkins? I think you can compare. People were actually in the
Yeah.
comments saying you can't compare. And actually, Austin said, that's true. You can't compare tested and untested. Can you compare them and say, you know what? I believe, like, I think, call me crazy, pound for pound, you are more talented than the other 125s in the untested.
Yeah.
I think
So
that.
as I said, like I coach quite a few guys who are untested, right? So you can imagine that I have these discussions with them like head on, and just through like, their competitions and what they tell me and everything like that, I could have like a first-hand like idea as to like, I guess, what benefits they would receive over someone who's tested, right? Um, and it's three things, mainly three things. The first one is obviously the PEDs, which, boost you by whatever percentage. And I think that's the most difficult one to quantify just because um, different people respond differently to PEDs. So, for example, I could say that I'm better than um, John Hack or Perkins because he's better than John Hack, but he could take PEDs and not respond that well and maybe get like a 2% boost in his strength. That's one. The most important one, in my opinion, is the 24-hour weigh. And the reason for that is because when comparing people across weight classes and across like tested and untested, a lot of times you turn to dots, right? So, for example, Taylor was saying John's best dots is 661, and I could hit 661 if XYZ. And that could be true because with a 24 weigh Taylor could cut an additional 10 pounds and then still compete at the same weight he would if he did a 2-hour weigh. You know what I mean? And that would just instantly boost his dots without him even having to take PD, right? So that the 24 weigh is
Good
huge.
point.
And the last one is the deadlift bar. It wasn't so much like a factor when they were using the Texas deadlift bar. Yes, it was a factor, but now with the Kabuki, massive, like massive. Like I'm sure you running King of the Lifts, I'm pretty sure that you see all of these guys who might be like 17, 18, 19, 20 just popping up and they pull in like more than any tested lifters ever pulled in competition. It's just popping up like, hey, I could pull 900, I could pull 900, I could pull 900, And it's no coincidence, at least to me, that that's happening as the Kabuki bar has become the standard in untested powerlifting over the last couple of years. So those three things, I think, are what kind of like give untested lifters an advantage over tested lifters, right? So I think that they can be compared, but it is difficult because it's very difficult. But it needs to be compared on like a person by person basis because the PEDs, you can't tell how much of a boost that person got because John Hack was a world champion in the IPF before he started, before he switched on tested. The 24 wins is extremely easy to quantify because you kind of know what that person is cutting from. For example, John Hack, for his best meet ever, he cut from like 220, 225 to 198. So that's 20 pounds of body weight that he gained in dots. And over the course of 24 hours, obviously, and they do IVs as well. So they don't just recomp with food, they do IVs. So that means in like an hour time, you gain back like 15 pounds of body weight. You feel good, So that's another major one. And then the deadlift bar, obviously, different people benefit differently. So I think it is possible, but it is extremely difficult to quantify exactly how much each untested person gets from each one of those variables. So,
having said that, well, a couple things. What kind of situation would the untested be if they didn't have John Hack?
it would be bad because it's getting to a point now. So you have Jesus who took the all-time world record in sleeves. So he's the strongest powerlifter ever in sleeves. And he's looking like poised to take the all-time world record period in sleeves, although it's a wrapped record, which would be just pure disrespect to the to the untested side. Then you have obviously Perk, who he has the all-time world record in his weight class, and then well, with me, I'm 10 kg behind the all-time world record in my weight class. So if I was to get the opportunity to compete again, I would probably break that. Because my best total is 1045, the all-time world record is 1055. So in sleeves. So yeah, they need John Hack, to be honest.
They need John Hack. Why is this? What's going on here? What do you think it is?
I just think it's the depth of talent. And I think the tested the genetic outliers, I think, are less likely to take steroids. So, for example, someone like me, right? My best total, as I said, is 1045, which is 2300, right? Why would I take steroids? It's like, what? How much stronger do I want to be? You know, so it's like, however, if I was someone, let's say I was like struggling to hit like a, I don't know, maybe like a 900 kg total or something like that, maybe I would want that like boost, that edge, depending on like how much it mattered to me, you know? So I think the people who see strength come quickly to them, somebody like Nonso, somebody like Bob, these guys, why would you take steroids? You know, you compete untested, you feel like you could be better than everyone without it, fine, you know? So I think that is one of the things is the pool is bigger, and then also the people who strength comes to more easily because they have that high genetic limit. They just don't see the need for it. So
Yeah, when the depth of talent is so much bigger, you're going to find those outliers. When the depth of talent is
yeah,
shallow, it's difficult to find the outliers. So then when you find the outliers, because the depth of talent is so much bigger, those outliers, to your point, are like, why would I do this? Why would I potentially put myself in the situation where I'm harming my organs, shortening my lifespan, all the different repercussions that could come with it. We look, I've had guys like Garrett Fear, Dan Bell, openly, obviously taking PEDs saying, don't do it. Don't do it if you got a choice. Just keep doing your own thing. Like there's you can't go back to a large extent. I mean, Garrett's hopped off it, but it can impact you.
yeah,
If you could do it and if you could do all of what you're doing, Rondell, and not do it, why would you put yourself in that situation? Hormones, by the way, don't just make you stronger. It's what makes you you.
yeah,
You would not be you any this is I mean, Garrett Fear came on here, this is years ago. And he was like, you are not you anymore when you fuck with your hormones. That's what
yeah,
makes you happy, sad, mad, whatever. That's your hormones. When your hormones go all over the place, you're all over the place and you're not you anymore.
yeah,
A lot of times people don't even take that into consideration. They don't
yeah,
even realize like you're still you, but you're altering you from here on out and you're going to lose yourself.
yeah,
And is that worth it? And then not to mention long-term health and what it does to you. Yeah, for sure. In the avenues, why would you miss the IPF World Championships and Sheffield and World
yeah,
Games, etc., if it was on the table for you?
yeah,
Why would you prefer to do a much smaller meet? Because untested has meets, but they're not as big as IPF Worlds or Sheffield. They're just
yeah,
not. So yeah, it makes no sense.
yeah. And I think the financial incentive with the untested as well is now surpassed on the tested side. So, you know, I think when John Hack like first switched over to untested, it was because tested really had no money in it. Like there was no, you know what I mean? There was no um financial incentive to stay a tested powerlifter. And now we have got like Joe Bornstein, for example. He won um the the Pro Series final and he won 20K. And that's just in the Pro Series. So, you know, going to Worlds, you have sponsors, you have different incentives. Going to Sheffield, obviously, you know, you have a huge cash prize there. So it's like, yeah, the young people coming up right now probably gonna gravitate more to the tested side. And the only reason I could see some young guys going towards the untested side is because they like the deadlift bar. And that's only like a handful of guys who really like it. And that's, yeah, to me, that's not enough of a reason. But yeah.
The reason, well, first off, so yeah, I do think they should be very happy they have John Hack.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the biggest boosts to John Hack's resume is he was an IPF world champion. And to do so, he had one of the biggest showdowns in IPF history against Brett Gibbs that changed the game in a lot of ways. I've made posts about it, talked about it. Everyone knows all the firsts, air quotes, wrapped around that showdown and how special that showdown was. It wasn't just any
Yeah.
IPF Worlds win, it was a massive win. To this day, we still talk about it like it's folklore. And
Yeah.
that to him, he could say when people are like, are some of these people genetic freaks or are they gassed up in shallow divisions of talent pool and they don't even realize it? Because when we
Yeah.
look at previous IPF worlds, you can look at All right, no disrespect, okay? But if you look at some people, like for instance, Kimberly Walford, who has the most world title wins of all time, and you would say GOAT. But then you look at the totals she posted up in those yesteryears. The totals she posted up to win now wouldn't win a weight class below. And in terms of like freak athlete, we now, like at the time, we thought she's a freak athlete, once in a lifetime generational talent. But now that the sport is swollen in its talent, and we probably aren't even close to our true potential yet. Because we haven't even had the discussion of how many female outliers. You just said the men have only seen 4 or 5. We haven't even talked about the women yet. And now that we're starting to see it, I get the shit go as a 69, and Kimberly was 69. She weighed in around 69 kilos when she was competing at 72. Agatha's hitting 600 kilos, and she's still a junior. And when we talk about Kimberly Walford, the GOAT, it's you start looking at, well, the talent pool was much, 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 much smaller in that time period. There's no disrespect. We need those people from yesteryear. Otherwise, we can't be here today. We couldn't be here today. We need people like her blazing trails. It's not disrespectful when I say this. I'm just saying, in terms of talent pool, it matters when they swell. And in the untested, if I was to gauge where they are at in their progress and growth, they're not comparable to what the tested side is today. They are yesteryear's tested side. And there might be people walking around thinking, I am a phenomenal tip of the spear, elite level athlete, and they don't know. It would be, oh, love, if we were to swell your talent pool, you would be somewhere in the middle of the pack at the world level, not at the tip of the spear. And they have no idea. They just think they don't know. But we in the tested have seen it. We've seen it. We've seen what can happen when the talent pool swells and the real genetic freaks enter the party. And then it's like, oh, wow, okay, what we thought was amazing is really just good. Very good.
And I have two critical points to make there, right? The first one is what you were talking about first with like John Hack and Brett Gibbs, and how that's like a very important like mark on his resume for John Hack, right? I fully agree with that. And I know the last podcast you had dropped with Pitre, you were talking about rivalries. I think if John Hack had stayed in the IPF, that could have been one of the rivalries that would have like changed the sport, because it already did, and it was only 1 year. You know what I mean? Like I remember that. Like that was in 2017, right?
16.
Oh, that was 16. I started powerlifting at the end of 2015, and I remember being so hype for that like rivalry and showdown, and seeing all the like head-to-heads and everything like that. I was less than 1 year into powerlifting, and that like lit like a fire in me. It's like, I need to get to that level. I need to like be that good. So it's like, to me, that like rivalry, that head to head already changed the sport. And I feel like if they like kept at it, it would have been so much better. And one of the reasons why it was so good as well is because it was two people from two different sides of the world. So you had like the US, and then you had like New Zealand. And the thing with the US is going to be the US, and then everybody else would like rally behind Brett because he's like representing the rest of the world, you know? So it had that like aspect to it where it was like, okay, well, the US versus everybody else, you know? And I was obviously team Brett because like I was just like a Brett fanboy at that point. So that was a huge rivalry in and of itself. And I just wanted to mention that. The next thing is that you mentioned with the whole Kimberly Walford thing, right? This is why I think we had spoken about this on the last podcast, but it's so interesting when you talk about like titles versus performances, right? And I know you, Russ, and a couple other people really, really respect titles. And I agree, but I think titles should be viewed in like eras, meaning that like in a certain time frame, a title is worth so much, and it's almost like as time progresses, like every 5 year or 4 year chunk, a title is doubled in worth. So, for example, 2012 to 2015, those titles were worth, you know, so much. 2016 to 2019, those titles were worth like double that. 2020 to, I don't know, let's say 2022, those titles were worth so much, and so on and so forth. Because I feel like as the sport progresses more, you could see that even though the exact same title of IPF World Champion could have been won in 2014 or 2024, it's much different. Like it's not just, oh, well, you're a one-time world champion and I'm a one-time world champion. I won mine in 2015, you won yours this year. We're the same. No, sir.
No, homie.
Like, yeah. So I think titles need the caveat of um titles need the caveat of what year they were done in, and the context, and then also the numbers that that person did would also like frame the title. So for example, if someone won a title, let's say in Agatha's in 69 kg, right? Let's say someone won a title in 2015 with like a 600 kg total in 69 kg. Then it's like, well, okay, that person has 3 world titles and they total just as much as Agatha in the same weight class. That's a better lifter because they have more titles and the same total. So that's why I think, like, I don't think it's really titles versus performances or totals or numbers, but I think you need to consider all of that together for it to really be impactful, because just titles alone could be, as you said, skewed by when it was done and everything like that. So
Um, so yes, and there's a reason why in Hall of Fames they have the pioneer wing, because it's
mhm.
respectful to say this person, and this is in baseball, boxing, there's a pioneer wing, football, all these sports, because you would say, look, these people would not be able to compete in modern times. Babe
Yeah,
Ruth would never hit a home run on these pitchers they have today, but he deserves to be respected, and he's an all-time great,
yeah.
but he's in the pioneer wing. And I think to a large extent and let me also pose to you this. So previously, it'd be crazy to say Kimberly Walford isn't the GOAT based off of
Mhm.
all of her titles. Is she the GOAT now?
No.
And who is
And
the GOAT?
and and again, the reason why I say that is because, as I said at the start of the podcast, like, because of everything that I've been through in my like career, I see things very differently. So it's like, for me, you can imagine how difficult it is for me to value titles when I know that there are people who've won more titles than me that I'm better than. Like, just like, matter of fact, not even me speculating, like, I am, right? So I don't view titles with the same like prestige as most people. Um, but in terms of who's the GOAT, um, honestly, I might say Amanda Lawrence, to be honest. Because I think and it's tough because Amanda suffers from the same thing that like I may suffer from when I get to the IPF, which is just being that individual who is super strong but isolated in their weight class. So she doesn't really get that, like, that like she doesn't really get the recognition and the praise that she deserves. But I do think it could be her, just because you look at her formulas based on the fact that she's 84 kg. Her formulas are very competitive across the board, whether it be points or dots or anything like that. Very competitive. She has the titles. Probably gonna win again this year. Um, she has the world records. I just think yeah, like, I think she's the good.
Yeah, because that's the curse of being the outlier,
Yeah,
is that you are just too far ahead of everyone else. She at least had Daniela Mello that one year, 2019 World. She at least had that, which was an
yeah,
amazing showdown, controversial. Ooh, but an amazing showdown. And but you're right, she's just so far ahead. But look at her. She's such an outlier and is racking up so many world titles, and she's still young. She needs
Mhm.
another outlier to emerge.
Yeah.
And let's see what happens because there's other outliers there's always going to be somebody who comes out of nowhere that emerges. But yeah, for you to say, I, I think I was late to the party in terms of recognizing, hey, Walford is not the GOAT anymore because for so long, it was silly to not say Walford because she had like 7 or 8 world titles and she'd
Yeah.
missed one worlds due to politics like yourself. So her numbers could even be further inflated. So it was silly to say otherwise. But now it's honestly silly to say, to not recognize, excuse me, have you looked at the numbers though?
Yeah.
She wouldn't even podium. She
Yeah.
might not be top 5 in some years in the 69 kilo class. Like these ladies, like Leah and Gara are doing 585 in 582.5 as 69s.
Yeah.
Kimberly's never done anything close to that. She's not on the podium, sir.
Yeah.
And she's the GOAT. She's the greatest of all time. That's difficult.
Hmm.
And again, we needed Walford. She came along at a time when we needed her, and she carried that flag for women's powerlifting for so many years. Hats off. Her
Yeah. Of
place in history can never be taken away. But
course
it
not.
is too much of a compensation to say for here on out, let's call her the GOAT.
Hmm.
When you could imagine what Agatha would have done to all the ladies in circa 2012, 13, 14, 15. Like it would have been
Yeah.
like, if you looked at the totals, it would have appeared, did all the other ladies miss one of the events? Why is her total so far ahead?
Yeah.
What is going on here?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's an interesting one. In terms of showdowns that we could put
Hmm.
together today,
Hmm.
what is the most intriguing showdown for you, either men's or women's?
Um, I really enjoyed on the woman's side, um, Agatha, Leah, and
All right.
it was Gara. Yeah, Corolla. Yeah, I enjoyed that. That was amazing. That was probably the 3 best performances of all time in the same weight class on the same day. So that was insane.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're not gonna see that again because they all announced they basically go in different weight classes, right? All 3 of them.
Well, no. So, um, and this is actually Gara and Leah are both going to go 69 and they're going to do their damn thing again. And
Hmm.
they were only 2.5 kilos away at Sheffield. And of
Yeah,
course, Gara was looking to try to beat Agatha. If she had her eyes on Leah, I mean, they're as close as they get. Leah and Gara are like, and Gara's phenomenal. What she did at Worlds to win the 63 kilo class, when she did as a 6'3 is insane.
yeah,
657.5, if I remember correctly. Gara's an all-time great. She's just not as hyped because she doesn't post like Leah and doesn't have like Leah's with the whole French team that's crazy popular right now. And like, you know,
yeah.
but she is an absolute her resume stacked. So her and Leah, we got that at Worlds, my friend. And that is
Hmm.
as close gets. And then Agatha versus Carlina Tongatea. And what I like, Agatha saying, I have revenge left to get with Carlina. And Carlina, who did 6'10 and a half. And Agatha's like, look, I did 6 as a 69. You did
Hmm.
6'10 as a 76. You're in danger. And Carlina, who is as nice a person as you could meet in real life and on podcast, but in terms of a competitor, is
Yeah,
ferocious. And she's like, come and get some, my friend. Come on up.
yeah,
You think 6'10 and a half is all I got? Let me show you what I got. And so I'm interested. Uh,
yeah,
those are 2 really good ones.
yeah. I would be interested to see Agatha versus Kalina. Besides that, I'm extremely interested, looking forward to seeing I keep forgetting her name, the super heavyweight who did Kianat, the women's side.
Oh, Alexis Jones.
Yes, Alexis. I'm interested to see Alexis versus
Brit
everyone else,
and
Brittany and
Sonita. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so yeah, that would be huge because I saw Alexis compete at because we were in the same like flight competing at USAPL Nats, and she's extremely talented young lady. So I think that should be a good battle. Besides that, on the women's side, I don't really have anything on my radar. Obviously, I think a good rivalry is brewing between Jad and
I was about to say, dog.
yeah, that's a good one as well. But yeah, I don't know. That's also not one that's heavily hyped because the thing with women is that they don't really like talk shit. Like they need to they need to talk more smack. You know what I mean? And I think that would help, but it's just not within them. Maybe they do behind closed doors, but on social media they're always so nice and supportive and stuff like that. So I don't know.
Well,
And
what
then
I love,
mhm.
sorry, before we get to them, are you about to go to the men's? I just want to say
Yeah,
something
yeah, yeah.
before we move on from the 57s. What I did love, and you're right, they don't talk like a lot of shit here and there, but not super. But I do like that Jade is entering her second Sheffield saying, I want revenge. And
Hmm.
the word revenge is very personal. If I say, like, if me and you are going head up, and I'm like, no, I got to beat Rondell, like, it's a goal of mine. The respect I have for Rondell as a lifter to have a win over Rondell, oh my gosh, right? You've heard that before.
Hmm.
But if you beat me and I say, I want revenge on Rondell, if you heard somebody even say that, like, it's vengeance I want on you, that's very
Yeah.
personal. That's a movie. And Jad came into this saying, I want revenge. And that was like, oh, I love just the wording. And it wasn't aggressive. And she left it at that. Because on the women's side, you're right, they don't talk a lot of shit. There's on the men's side, you guys go at it
Yeah.
sometimes, right? And oftentimes it's on King of the Lifts, and God bless. I ain't mad at that at all. But the women are pretty respectful. And here's something else. Jade has turned into a bit of a world champion slayer at Sheffield. That's the second time she got revenge at the
Hmm.
Worlds. She loses, comes in second, and then meets the defending world champion at Sheffield and slays them. She did it to Joy Namani when Joy won 2022 Worlds, and then at Sheffield she beat her, and then she did it to Natalie Richards, who won Worlds and then at Sheffield beat her. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's another showdown. In the men's though, what are some showdowns that you're hyped
So basically what
or you want to see? Even if there's
yeah,
super matches
basically
that they're not at, even
yeah,
if it's
everyone
let
is
me
like
open it up. Sorry, go ahead. You go ahead.
mhm. No, 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 you go ahead. I think it's
Okay,
a
okay. I was
little
going to
bit. Yeah,
open
you
it
go
up a
ahead.
little. I was going to open it up, not just what you're going to see at Worlds, but super showdowns you think we should see. Open it up. Be like, look at it. This isn't going to happen at Worlds, but
Mhm.
I would love to see this.
Yeah. So I think what everybody is talking about, like mainly, is the Perk versus Russ.
Oh, that was the one.
So
That's
everybody
the
is
one.
like, oh yeah. Here's the thing, I don't think that's the one. And here's why, right? Because it would be a good battle in terms of just like the totals and like just strength and everything. But the thing is, it's like it's a lose-lose situation for us, in my opinion. Because it's like if you beat Perk, it's like, all right, cool, you should have beat him. If you don't beat him, it's like that's tough. Like that only adds to Perk, you know. So I I would love to see it, but it's not like my main like I need to see this because I just feel like while it would be close on strength, it's two guys from two different weight classes. So to me, it's like, you know, I don't know.
Let's hang here for a second
That's
before we
my
move
take on
on.
the Perk versus Rust. Mhm.
Let's hang on this showdown for a second before we move on. You're right. First off,
Mhm.
I discussed this on the last podcast with Pitre about what this might do for Russ's legacy. Like he's the greatest 83 of all time in my estimation. If you want
Yeah.
titles, if you want how long he's been at the top, or if you want total, he's got all of those. So it's got to be him. However, if he loses to a guy who's moving up and doesn't fully move up in Perk, what does that do? Does that people make people recalibrate their estimation? I don't know. It has to an extent. I think his
Mhm.
resume is you can't undo the dominance he's done. And
Yeah.
not even just winning titles, but the popularity. Man, I was at a local gym talking to a guy who's not into powerlifting at all. And he's a guy, I'm on a power building program, and he's telling me about it. And I'm like, hold on, who wrote this? Where did you get this program? He goes, do you know who Russell Orey is? And this isn't a power lifter. So just to
Yeah.
show you how he transcends and what he means to the sport, none of that can be undone. But if he loses to Perk, like if Perk loses to him, whatever. I
Hmm.
went up against it's David versus Goliath. I'm supposed
Yeah.
to. He's the greatest 83 of all time, and I dared to be great and faced him. But
Yeah.
if the greatest 83 of all time loses to a 74, head up. And he
Hmm.
won't be a 74 when they match gut. If he beats him weighing 74, that's really bad. But like that's a whole different story. But if he
Yeah.
moves up and he's a small 83 and he loses, it might to an extent. But so you're right on that. And that can't be
Yeah.
denied. I would push back on people who some people inevitably will go too far and try to wipe clean what Russ has all accomplished, which would be an
Yeah.
overcorrection. But what I would tell you is though, in a sport, just like MMA and boxing is a little closer to this when it comes to weight classes and individual, not team sport.
Hmm.
If you're going to be remembered, you need to take big risks. And the
Yeah.
reason why, if you were to ask me, well, why would he do it? Because if he wins, he's supposed to win. I would say to you or whoever, and that's a good question, fair question, but I would say to you, because it would create the biggest showdown our sport has, and
Yeah.
everybody would tune in, and everyone would, and the more events you're involved in that are must see in your era is why you're going to be remembered in eras to come, just like Hack versus Gibbs. And even though
Yeah.
Gibbs lost Hack versus Gibbs, he's not, so he's not going to be the GOAT 83 because he lost a major showdown there and he lost to Russ in a major showdown as well. But he's remembered, and nobody from that era can forget Gibbs
Yeah.
because he stepped up and risked it. And believe me, my friend, there are world champions from eras who are forgotten, even though they're world champions, because they never had that quantifying like moment. You got to make a
Yeah.
moment. So although Russ would be, he'd be like, man, I hope you win. You're the bigger guy. And he has a couple other things for him. A, he needs a moment. And he's a type of guy who recognizes moments and he can capitalize. And if he
Hmm.
wins, he still beats a freaking superstar, phenom outlier. And he'd raise his
Yeah.
hand and say, you may not talk about me like I'm Perk and Atwood, but let me remind you head to head, I beat them. That
Hmm.
still means something.
Yeah.
And B, win, lose, or draw, Russ could still raise his hand and say, but like if you're going to take shots at me that I lost to a smaller man, keep in mind it's after I cut down, but I am still the bigger, stronger man, period. And he will never out total me if we just go head up.
Yeah.
Let me come in at 90 kilos like I was in South Korea. I don't know what his
Hmm.
90 kilo total would be now, but
Yeah.
it would be a lot more than what we're talking about at 83 because his 90 kilo total, what was it? 882 and a half or whatever the hell.
I think it
So
was 885. Yeah.
yeah, 885. Thank you. So he still have that in Russ fans. He would have given Russ fans something to carry that
Yeah.
water for him and say, hey, man, all right, fine. Perk got him when he's cutting weight. Maybe he overstayed his welcome as an 83. There's enough. There's enough. But I agree
Yeah.
with you. I don't know. But there's hype on it. Dude, when I made that post, people went nuts with it.
Yeah. I think so I don't think that like if Russ were to lose, I don't think that it would like damage his legacy in any way. And the reason for that is because he's the best 83 ever. So to damage his legacy would mean that every other 83 was just garbage. You know what I mean? Like to say that Russ is like,
Well, it depends on how
oh,
much
he's
it
not a
damages it. We'll put it this way.
true.
Not wipe clean. I think what people would say is he can't be the GOAT now. He could be, he's one of the he's one of the greats. But
Hmm.
you can't overstate. Maybe, or maybe they say he's still the goat. He had a bad day or whatever.
Yeah.
It's not all or nothing. But
I
there has
think
to be some kind of skin. There's skin in the game. It has to do
yeah,
something to your legacy to take an L.
for
Otherwise,
sure. Yeah. The only way out of it for Russ though is that he needs to start like pushing 93 numbers, to be honest. Like that's the only way out of this situation for him. Because if he stays 83, it is inevitable that Perk will, you know what I mean? Like he would be like squeezed in there. Like you're gonna get
Coming.
like yeah. So Russ needs to get close to that like 885 in 83. And is a lot, but it's just it is what it is, you know. And I think Sheffield will be the place to do that. So I guess we'll see. I don't foresee Perk going to 83 for Sheffield just because I mean, although it depends on what the world record is at the time. It depends. But yeah, I was just saying obviously it would be easier for him to like win in 74, but it depends. So we'll see.
Well, World Games, they're going to clash.
Yeah,
They
they will.
combine the weight classes.
Yeah.
So, in Perk on the podcast said, like for sure, win Worlds, obviously 74. And if he can out total Russ at Worlds, who knows? That's a weird scenario because they're both trying to win but not extend. At
Yeah.
Sheffield, if he can out total Russ as a 74, and he's as talented get, Perk, so is Russ. But at Worlds, they will be in the same World Games, they will be at the same weight class. Like the biggest showdown might be at World Games, which makes World Games all that more exciting. And they will go
Yeah.
head to head in the same weight class, my friend. We will see Russ and Perk at World Games head to head. We're going to sort this out. Now, this leads to a segue here. What about eventually Russ goes 93? And this is where he can regain steam.
Mm-hmm.
If he beats Perk, that's it. I mean, he's already the GOAT 83, but now he's won a massive showdown and beaten head up one of the most talented or possibly the most talented powerlifter, depending on who you ask. But by then you'll be
Mm-hmm.
a back and maybe it'll be you. But one of the most talented powerlifters of our era. He'll have a win over him. So his resume will be insane. So he decide, but if he loses to Perk, a good rebound would be to move up and try to collect a second world title in a second weight class. And then all of a sudden, that changes the entire discussion. And it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
you caught Russ when he was dying making 83, and he can no longer make 83. He could rewrite
Mm-hmm.
history. And if he wins the 93 world title, everyone's like, oh my God, okay, well, now we're talking old time status here. And the showdown, imagine this 93 is already bonkers.
Yeah.
But we will finally get Pitre versus Russ. And if you like trash talk and history and the whole nine, ooh, buddy, do we got one for you?
Yeah. I would love to see that. I would love to see it. When the whole like Russ versus Petrie thing was like at its height, I enjoyed that. Like especially when like I didn't enjoy Petrie bombing out. That was sad to see. But Russ's like how he got on social media, just like pressed him on it. I love that. Like as an athlete, I would hate to receive that, but I love that sort of like that like deep competitive drive, that like shit talk, that like um you know what I mean? Like it's almost like in this moment, I hate this individual and I would do anything to beat this individual type of thing. Like series like The Last Dance and things like that. I like feed off of that. Like I I would say probably Bob is the only person I know that is like as competitive as me. And maybe that's just because like I know him better than like some other powerlifters. But yeah, at this point, I just waiting for someone to like start a beef with me. To be honest, like I just
No one's
I
well.
need that.
You're gonna have to wait a minute, man, because nobody's close enough. It'd be awkward.
Yeah.
But I know what you mean. Well, that's why, unless it's cross divisional like you and Taylor had, which was actually heat. It's a
Hmm.
shame you weren't around for those Sheffields because there was actually heat. People
Yeah.
cared. Those podcasts blew up. Everyone was talking about it. I know your DMs blew up, and you kept having to address every time you did a Q&A on your Instagram
Yeah.
live. You would do address and like, all right. And at one point, you're like, last time I'm gonna talk about Taylor. And it's been a couple years and we're still talking about it. So it actually brings heat. It brings like attention to both lifters. It's not a bad thing. And
Yeah.
with Russ and Petrie, that was like our Kendrick Lamar versus Drake moment. where they were just verbally
Mm-hmm.
going at each other. And Russ
Yeah.
was going like, he did bomb emojis and like he was throwing cartoons of like, whatever bombs going off, like so whatever. It was like, it was that.
Yeah.
And
And
I mean,
he
it
said,
was, it was,
he had posted, he said he was feeling blessed today. I was like, that's crazy.
and, and and the thing is too, they're competitors and they're talking sports.
Yeah.
So when the big fallout with that, and some people got upset with Russ, but Russ came on and said, I a aimed at a competitor, a direct competitor.
Mm-hmm.
B kept it sports. I'm not talking about his personal life. I'm not saying he's a bad human being, whatever. Straight up sports. And in the middle of all that, I checked in because I'm not immune to, like, people come on the podcast and talk about like fire shots at each other athletically.
Mm-hmm.
And I will lean into the hype, and people are like, oh, my man, stirring the pot again. But I'm trying to build hype, and I build hype on showdowns and whatnot, right? And interest in these. But if it's getting hot, a little hotter than I might have anticipated, I checked in with Brandon and said, my man, everything all good over there? Like, just let you know, like checking in.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, no, we're good. It's all sports. I'm all good. Like, I'm stinging because it's a bomb out, but he's like,
Yeah.
it's nothing bad like that. And then I told
Mm-hmm.
him, I'll be sharing some stuff, but it's just in the rivalry between you two. But don't feel isolated or whatever. Like, it's never like, I'm towing the line between, because like I'm friends with both guys, but I'm not I would never like pick a side where I'm like, I'm only gonna have one guy on the podcast and not the other. I'm only gonna
Yeah.
repost one
Yeah.
guy and not the other. I never do stuff like that. And I never want someone to think like, oh, if you're really close with Russ and he's taking shots at me, maybe that means no, no, no. And Russ would never in a million years ask anything like that. All parties understand this is sports. We all have our roles to play.
Yeah.
We're building. So it never got ugly, but it was hype. And if they face off, because I've seen it in other sports. Again, I'm a
Mm-hmm.
big boxing fan. I saw what happened when Sugar Ray Leonard and Marvin Hagler were supposed to fight for years. And then Sugar Ray retired. And after a couple years of retirement, came out of retirement and fought Hagler. And people were like, and I mean, it was bitter, bitter, my
Yeah.
friend. And when the match finally happened, and people like, are people still going to care? It was blockbuster. Yes, they would. Yes, they'll come.
Yeah.
People bring back the stories, bring back the clips. Yes, they do. And if and when that showdown happens and Russ moves up to 93, he's got work to do at his 83. He's got Perk. He's got a lot of options, which is the best possible scenario for Russ. But if he moves up, oh yeah, oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's gonna be it's good. Oh yeah, it's gonna be big. Everyone,
Yeah.
oh buddy,
I think that'll actually be better, at least in my opinion, than the Perk versus Russ, because
really,
Russ, yeah, I think Russ would like fill out 93 or at least come close to it. So it would be like a true head up, like these are two guys just battling on kilos. Versus with Perk, yes, they are battling on kilos, but all right, this one guy is super light compared to the other one. So uh, to me, it's just a little bit different where um, both parties aren't like they don't equally have as much to lose with the Perk versus Russ, but with Russ versus Pitre is like a true like, yo, let's see who is the best 93, you know? So I hopefully that day comes sooner than later. So
um, yeah. So I think Russ would be best at 90 and not 93. But I think
yeah,
Petrie might be better at 93 than 90. Because I think
yeah,
Petrie is naturally a larger human being. He's taller,
mm-hmm,
he's got a bigger frame. But
yeah,
so they're both offset, slightly offset. But anyways, for an athlete, the best possible scenario is to have nothing but mega showdowns that everybody can't wait to see all over you. And that's Russ. And for the
yeah,
people who are associated with those showdowns, it's amazing because Russ is such a massive popularity wise. So to be involved with that showdown is huge. Um,
yeah.
are those the two biggest ones you think on the men's side? Is there another one you would love to see?
Um, so two things. One is that like I think it's interesting for me constantly being involved in like battles is a good thing because it makes people like pay attention, but at the same time, it's not as impressive to me. You know what I mean? So like someone like I don't know, like Keiko, for example, right? Who extremely well battle tested, done it time and time again. He's a very clutch lifter, right? He's a great lifter, but to me, it's like I feel like domination is also like is more impressive, you know, to an extent where it could become old if every single year you come in and you win it by 50 keys, that becomes old. But I I struggle to decide between like, do I want to see like a close battle and this person just pull ahead time and time again, or do I want to see this person have a close battle and then just like rise up and dominate from there going on, you know? That's tough for me.
Mm.
And in terms of like other like battles, I'm very like excited to see all the guys who like switched over from USCPL. So obviously we mentioned Perk, we mentioned Russ. Uh, I'm excited to see Pitre, Gustav, and Emil. I think those three are gonna be. I think that's gonna be like a good battle there. And I think at Worlds, hopefully we finally see a 93 go over 900 keys. Because I think honestly, like obviously things happen in comp and then somebody could win with like 890. But I think you know, I do think that somebody will be strong enough to pull ahead and hit like a 905, 910 kind of thing. So that one I'm excited for. And then Ashton versus Anatoly should be good, but I don't know where Anatoly is at right now in terms of like his strength levels. Because I know for Sheffield, he still had the world record total, but um, you know, I don't think he was like 100% like healthy.
Mm.
So if he is, that would be a great battle as well. Um, and yeah, I think in terms of like upcoming battles, that's it. And but I would love, and like I think most of the guys that like follow me would love to see a filled out Bob versus me. I think that would be so perfect. And the reason why I think it would be perfect and one of like the the like best battles is because one, you have the American, and then you have a non-American, and you also have just a good combination of like um numbers to body weight. So you have that like coefficient, and then you also have like just massive absolute load being moved, you know? Like if we both around like 1050 or something like that, that's insane. Like that's insane to see. You know what I mean? So um that for me, obviously from a personal standpoint, that's what I want to see. Um so yeah, that's my like prime battle of like what I want to see in the next couple of years.
Well, if Bob plays his cards right, let's see how it all unfolds. But he could be like it could feel like a Perk versus Russ situation.
Yeah.
You know, yes, he's the smaller man, but he's if he could fill out a little more and close the gap a little bit, we'll see. But he's got some work to do to catch up to you to make it because the difference is Perk and Russ are like 9 kilos apart. And that's Perk has
Yeah.
a 75 and they're nine
Yeah.
kilos apart, which makes it more intriguing. But yeah, we'll see. It's a I know what you mean. It's difficult. I mean, I want you to be in the mix as well. I want you to have that big showdown. But yeah, in Ashton, a little bit is somewhat. I'm intrigued in what Ashton has. Ashton, I heard somebody say that he was thinking about ending it at Sheffield. I don't know if that's. We'll see when we. I don't know if he's. I didn't hear that directly from him. Take that with a grain of salt. And also how he'll feel when that time comes around. If he's like, no, I said I'm pulling that out. I still got more to do. We'll
Yeah.
see. But that'll also impact how Bob feels about maybe writing the ship against him. How do you feel about more events like Sheffield that are less like Worlds is always Worlds?
Hmm.
But I also don't want to have, I think Sheffield is special, but I don't want, you can't have two or three Sheffields because
Yeah.
then Sheffield isn't Sheffield. And then Worlds will
Hmm.
really take over all over again. Sheffield is Sheffield because it's champion versus champion, outliers versus outliers. Who's the greatest outlier? If you're going to do
Yeah.
more events, I think it's got to be something special like USA versus the world and specific
Hmm.
showdowns or I don't know, super matches that we don't get to see. So we would be Perk versus Russ head up.
Yeah.
Sheffield isn't necessarily that because it actually incentivizes Perk and Russ to stay within their own weight classes. You would make another event different than Sheffield where it's no longer quite that. It's not weight class
Mhm.
driven. It's just all head up type deal. I don't know. I don't think, what do you think?
I think so I think as you say it could be like a USA versus the world thing. I think what would be dope is like a something like a regional clash. So you have Euros, you have NEPF, you have Asians, you have like South Americans, everything like that. Some sort of like regional battle where you maybe have like the top five lifters from each region battling for like I don't know. In that case, IPF points might make sense because um, the top five lifters from the region could be in any weight class, So, or maybe like the best lifter from the region in one particular weight class or something like that. But then the tough thing about powerlifting and having events like that is that lifters can only compete so many times per year. You know what I mean? So you can't get the best lifters in the world competing at five different events every single year. It would be great for the sport. And I think that's a huge edge that other like much bigger sports have on us. The fact that football they play every week, basketball they play every week is like we just don't have that. We have Sheffield and then we have a lull. We have Wolves, then we have a lull. And that's just sad. But if we had like something going on every 2 weeks, the sport would just would boom more. So I think some sort of like regional clash would be cool, where it would add even more significance now to Euros, to NAPF, to these competitions.
We have an opportunity due to the US being so stacked that when they send a team, they could send another team. And that other
Hmm.
team isn't like B squad lesser than. We're talking Jonathan Keiko or Gavin Aiden might be on that team.
Yeah,
Like we're talking world class, obviously. And Jonathan
yeah,
Keiko is the most decorated 93 of all time, and he's not going to make a world team. So there's room for like you're right, the same lifters can only compete so many times. But I
hmm,
think due to the way Worlds is set up, where a representative in each weight class can only go, particularly with the US, we got some room. We got a little bit of
yeah,
room. Now it's kind of like, what do we do with the Jonathan Kaikos? What do we do with an Angelo or Chris Perez in the 83s who didn't make it because of Russ, but they're phenomenal 83s. We still are we going to the washroom right now? Let's turn your camera off if you're
No, I just go to go my charger. We're good.
if you're we'll turn the camera off if you're gonna sit down and you undo your buckle. I'm like, okay, well, this isn't just audio, but but we do have an opportunity. And Delaney Wallace in the 83s, like we have, who's obviously world class. He's a multiple time world champion. We have room for events. So I think your idea of a regional is good. I think we could still do a
Mhm.
USA versus the world. And let's say for 83s, you take the highest ranked 83, which would be Delaney. You take the highest ranked
Mhm.
93, which would be Keiko. You take, and then you send them off against the world, and the rest of the world come and get some. And you could maybe do dual matches like that. I would still
Yeah,
watch. That'd be intriguing. And it
yeah,
wouldn't take away or dilute what Sheffield is, which is
mhm,
world's best of the best outliers. And it obviously won't dilute worlds. I think Sheffield proved you can never dilute what the world title means because worlds isn't less important with Sheffield. It's actually become bigger. The
yeah,
marriage between those two, it's become greater. To win a world title means you're going to Sheffield. And on the same token, the battles at Worlds is so phenomenal, and it's not by just how far you extend the record, but it's head to head. We clash, which is something special. But there's no formula, no how much you're extending the record by. Like we go head to head up, which is you'll never get that'll never be old. It'll never be old hat that we go head to head. So worlds will
Yeah.
never be touched in terms of that. Like that will never shake. So worlds, when people were initially worried, is Sheffield gonna devalue worlds? No, we found out World Championship has more viewership and more importance than ever, actually.
Hmm.
And Sheffield becomes they're and now if you want to get to Sheffield or you want to be involved or whatever, and you want to stack your resume, so when you're going into Sheffield, I'm a three-time world champion. It still means stuff, right? So those two,
Yeah.
the marriage between those two solidified. I don't
Yeah.
say so. I hopefully any other company or SBD themselves isn't like, let's try to do Sheffield again. Leave that.
Hmm.
Don't, you know, leave it. We have it. All you can do is dilute. Like, imagine another company comes around and is like, let's try to do the same thing as Sheffield. Now you're gonna it'll be like USAPL IPF split all over again. Now, what are you gonna do? What are you doing? What are you gonna
Yeah.
make people choose and split so they're not all going to Sheffield now after Worlds? What do you don't
Yeah.
do that? Please don't do that. This is the best possible scenario. This is lovely. Leave it
Yeah.
like this. If anyone's gonna do anything different, make it the fun stuff like dual matches with some of the talent that isn't going to Worlds or isn't going to Sheffield or whatever. Because there's a lot of
Yeah.
people whom it's like after nationals, like, what is my year over now? Nah,
Yeah.
use them, throw them in some matches.
How do you think the viewership for that would be though? Like considering that they aren't necessarily like the best of the best, at least right now, and they're more just like I guess like BT lifters.
Well,
Or
here's the
still
thing.
still yeah. Mhm.
Okay, well, put it this way. So Ade in Britain, 83,
Yeah.
he did 825. He's not going to
Hmm.
Worlds, and Jurens is going instead because Jurens Ade missed at the team selection meet. He missed weight by a little bit, so he can't go
Yeah.
as an 83. But he's out total Jurens, and he got his last deadlift to get 840. 840, but it was down up. He locked it out. He is a phenomenally talented lifter. If you told me, some people will say, you know what? He's got the highest total of an 83 ever in Britain.
Yeah.
So when we talk about him, it's not, well, he's not as good as, or he doesn't, no, I mean, it's crazy. And then you talk
Yeah.
about Delaney Wallace, who's a two-time world champion, two times
Mhm.
gone to Sheffield and broke the world record at Sheffield. And he did 842 and a half, and Ade just narrowly missed 840. If you were to tell me those two guys are going to clash and it'll be like, I mean, that's it, they're both world class. That's
Yeah.
phenomenal. That's not, and neither guy's going to be at Worlds. And Ade might
Yeah.
take silver at Worlds, or Delaney could take silver at Worlds, but they can't get the Worlds because, and Ade might be the best lifter outside of, Russell Ori. So I think there is some meat on the bone, or like Kaiko.
Yeah.
Kaiko could be like, look, I'm not going to Worlds, and and I wasn't beaten by another American to lose my
Hmm.
spot. I was in a different competition, and they just beat my
Yeah.
total later. But no American beat me head up. I'm still waiting for an American to beat me for my spot. That's why he's
Yeah.
not at Worlds. There's meat on the bone in terms of a storyline. Look, I'm good at storylines and I'm good at building. If you told me, can you build this? Can you build this so it feels still world class? I could tell you, my friend, these aren't your B team. These are guys who didn't make it through just the way the fork on the road comes. Like I don't have to tell you about that. How many
Yeah.
worlds you missed. So Kaiko's like, I didn't get beaten for my spot at nationals. I wasn't at nationals. Ade was like, yeah, I got the highest total ever, and I'm not going to be there. I
Yeah.
think there's enough, and there's guys like that in every weight class. You could do something, and girls too. You could do a little something, something. I could see something happening.
Yeah. I could see it. But I think it would all just take time to flesh out, right? Because I think SBD has the rally meet coming up. And I see some top lifters like Heather O'Connor, stuff like that, who could be like, world level threats. And they're gonna be at that thing. Like even like Big Dev, for example, like he could probably win worlds. Like if he was to go to worlds
That's
instead of Bob, he could probably win worlds. So yeah.
There you go. There you go. Like in terms like, are they world class? Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we need to see them again. We need them again. And we
Yeah.
could set them up with some intriguing showdowns. I don't know, man. There's some
For
stuff we
sure.
could do. There's a lot. The future's bright. Let's see what happens. Um, but
Definitely.
uh, but anyways, listen, man, we've already crushed over 2 hours, huh? We got to do these more often. I told you this in the
Definitely.
DMs, but we just it'd be like, well, what are we going to talk about? I haven't competed since like we can talk, man, because you
Yeah.
actually pay attention to what's going on. You know, there's some lifters who like don't pay attention to what's going on in powerlifting, which is fine.
So here's my take on that, right? Because I think you had mentioned this on some other podcast. I listen to like every episode. But I think the lifters who say that are lying and they're just trying to sound cool. Because you can't tell me, like you just try to sound like, oh yeah, I don't pay attention to anybody else. I just do my own thing. I stay in my own lane. You can't tell me that you've been powerlifting for how much of a years. This is what you do. This is your main thing, and you are one of the best in the world. And you don't pay attention to the sport, not even your own weight class. Yeah, I don't follow anybody else on social media. That's I call bullshit. I think that's just like a that's imagine if I said, oh yeah, I don't really pay attention to any other 120s. And I'm like, oh Tony hit what? Or Nonso, who's that? It would sound cool because it's like, oh yeah, I just above that. But I don't think it's real. To be honest.
Well, I think here's what I think. People pay attention who's who in their weight class, but I think
Mm-hmm.
some people don't pay attention to, like, for instance, you're a 120. I bet you there's 120s who like don't pay attention to people who are under 200 pounds and they just don't care. They're like,
Yeah,
you're too much smaller a human being. I'm sure it's good. I don't wrap my head around how good. Or on the women's side, some people come on and be like, I don't watch the women's. And I have women come on and be like, I don't watch the men's. I'm just not it. You
yeah,
know, both have done that. And I believe them. Or and they're
yeah.
like, and I've had some lifters on. And we can have the, for instance, when I say like we can have this discussion, so let's do this more often, by the way. But there are
Mm-hmm.
some lifters, if I have them on and we talk about different weight classes or whatever, they honestly, I could tell by the look on their face, I'm not going to put them on the spot, but I'm like, I'm not entirely sure they know who I'm talking about or the
Yeah,
who's in what weight classes. So I'm like, I'll just help them out and spoon feed them, and we'll get through this. But I can tell
yeah,
they're just not as into powerlifting as a whole. But
yeah.
I think you're right. The people who are like in their own weight class, they're like, I don't know who's who. It's like, come on,
Mhm.
man, how do you listen to it in it's your weight class?
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know, like powerlifting to me is like I enjoy any weight class, any um any competition really. Like I just watch it. It's fun, you know. And I don't necessarily I guess I can understand the people who let's say they're in 120 and they don't watch anyone in like below 93. I guess I can understand that because objectively they're not moving like the same loads. But to hold everyone to like your standard when you weigh 250 pounds is wild, you know? So
It's more they just don't have interest. It's
yeah,
not necessarily holding the standard, but they're like, okay, cool. The 66 is it's an amazing battle. And they might be like, okay, cool. I'm just not that interested. And they probably are super interested in like football or baseball. They have other interests, but they're like, in
yeah.
terms of powerlifting, I care about losing my weight class, maybe one up, maybe one down, or maybe
Mhm.
some major outliers. But I don't know who's who in there. If you want to talk to me about the fifth ranked 83 in the world, he's like, I don't know who that is.
Yeah.
Or whereabouts. Like if you bring up, have you seen the Battle of the 57s? He's like, remind me who's in the 57s again. You know what I mean? Like you'd
Yeah,
be
yeah.
like that. That happens more often than you might think. Like me and you just literally floated around between like Jack up and Natalie Richards to the 69s to whatever. I couldn't do that with
Mhm.
everybody.
Yeah,
Not with
I
everybody.
feel it.
But anyways, we got to do this more often. There's competition. There's Euros. There's Worlds. There's Sheffields, and then there's the rally meets and whatever. Let's
For
hop on
sure.
some podcasts and keep this moving, man, because this moved pretty freely. And when major news items pop up,
Mhm.
like when I asked you in our DMs, like, is there anything specific? Because like obviously I got no issues. I could talk, right? I could find things to talk
Yeah.
about. But when things pop up, some news items, hit
Mhm.
me up, my dude. Let's hop on here. And whether it's just me and you, or whether it's me, you, and I pull in like an Eric Helms or whatever the heck,
Mhm.
Rory Lynch, you know, like my usual. We could
Yeah.
talk about the news items and get into it. Or if we're talking about greatest performances of all time or GOAT debates or whatever the hell, man. Let's bring you in on some of these panels, man, and keep
Yeah.
it moving. And let's
Last
also talk.
mhm.
What's that? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the last question I had was when do you think would be a good time for me to do mock meet if I were to do it?
Well, it's funny you say that because I was just about to say, let's continue this talk, man, because I'm not just saying this on the pod. Like I for really real want to do this. Um,
Yeah.
let's talk offline. Let's
Mhm.
include the Fed and because we're going to be respectful of their opinions and let's find where the common ground is because we already know you could weigh in a body weight and do an SBD mate. We already know or an SBD mock. We already know this. You do it all the time.
Yeah.
Everyone does
Mhm.
all over the world. So how gauzied up can we go without them? Like, okay, well, step too far.
Yeah.
And then, but we know,
Yeah.
and we could probably get some help in terms of what the stream might look like, etc.
Mhm.
And we can make it look as good as possible with pre-interviews, after interviews, put together the live stream broadcast people. The co-commentary is going to be big, and
For sure.
to really make it look a certain way and feel a certain way of authenticity.
Yeah.
And let's sort this, man. We could do
All
this,
right.
and then you got to make it hype because there's not going to be someone else there with you. I know you got to set a target.
Yeah.
That's why people tune in. Otherwise, it's just like me watching you do a heavy SBD day. It doesn't sell. It puts a lot more
Yeah.
pressure on you, though. But if you say, on this day, I want to make history because this is what I'm trying to achieve,
Mhm.
that is how you're going to sell it. I already am going to tell you. And if we do this properly, other podcasts, obviously including this one, will have preview shows leading into being like, have you heard about what Rondell's quest is, his challenge is what he's going to do is,
Mhm.
and you go for that mark, and
Yeah.
that's the big can you do it or not thing. There's got to
Yeah.
be a yes or no, black and white. Can you hit it? And it's far more pressure, but it's far more interesting. And then everyone afterwards will tune in and be like, did he do it? So
Yeah.
you think about that. What mark it is, whether it's the untested, whether it's a big fat round number that's going to make everyone go, oh, or whatever it is. And then you work
Mhm.
back from there. That's the proper marketing of any event if it's by yourself and nobody else is involved. And
All right.
and it'll be fun. We could do a lot of fun with it, man.
Yeah. I already thinking 1085, but I'll give you a concrete number in a couple of days probably.
You in more than a number, we would flush out what the significance of that number is. So you would
Mhm.
say things like, with this would break, this is best tested, untested, this is highest, and look at all the different formulas. So what made Taylor Atwood so great when he did it, he took all three of the major formulas that were available at his time. So it was
Mhm.
undisputed. And that's what maybe the stream, the presentation, and you
Yeah.
name it, by the way. It's not just
Mhm.
Rondell's doing live on Tuesday. No, like the
Yeah.
event's called undisputed, or the event is called pound for pound, or the event is called something, and it's
Yeah.
attached to the goal you're trying to do. So if you're trying to establish yourself as the best pound for pound, you set your goal, and the event is called something, and then we
Yeah.
start working back from there. So we pick a goal, tangible, you hit it or don't hit it, and then we work back from there with the naming of it, the whole nine, and if it's 1085, what's the significance of that? Well, that is untested, that's tested. It gives me this dots, that GL points, that whatever. It's whatever. I don't know. We'll work it out.
1085, 1085 would give me everything.
And then if you
Yeah.
really want to get it big, you could do something like you could have sponsors involved that if you hit this certain number, this amount of money goes towards this charity or whatever the heck, or if you're raising money for whatever. If you want to do
Yeah.
good deed style, you could even work with the federation and do something like a workshop or a seminar or whatever for
Mhm.
the national team lifters or for something involved with that. And
Yeah.
it's just at the end of that, I don't know. There's a lot of pieces you could do to attach goodwill to it, to attach excitement to it, and to make something happen. And it's all unofficial. There's no
Yeah.
officials. There's no officials. So you're not attached to any unsanctioned WADA meet.
Mhm.
It's not an official meet. So that's very important. And man, we could do a lot. and you pick what it is and how much time you need, and we could assemble a team to make it good. And come on, man, we make history, man. We ain't waiting. We ain't waiting. Listen, when no
All
one
right,
gives you a chance, it's time to take chances.
time to create it.
But anyways, man, thank you for coming on as usual. Let everybody know, by the way, how they can get a hold of you for coaching.
Um, so actually, I'm not accepting anyone for coaching in like a while, but you can probably hit me up on Instagram at deadlift lord on the deadlift underscore lord 868, or just search Rondel Hunt, and yeah, should be able to find me, and you can shoot me a message.
Come in with your numbers, and this is a warning to everybody on the roster. You could get bumped if your numbers aren't okay. Rondell gets a hot one. He's got to bump you if that outlier comes in.
Yeah,
Thank you for coming on, my man. As per usual, we will talk in the DMs and keep this moving. And for everybody listening, as per usual, please do subscribe, give us high ratings, and until next time, six pack Lapadat, six up, and we are out.